The air hung heavy with the stench of death, a grim testament to the ferocity of the battle that had just taken place. The ground was littered with the fallen, each body telling a story of bravery, fear, and the ultimate sacrifice. Smoke curled from the battlefield, a grim reminder of the carnage. The once vibrant land was now a desolate wasteland, filled with the echoes of the past and the silence of the present. Do-hyuk stood amidst the wreckage, his gaze lost in the distance. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, memories of the battle flashing before his eyes, each one more haunting than the last. Hae-yun watched him from afar, her heart heavy with unspoken worry. She could see the toll the battle had taken on him, the weight of leadership pressing down on his shoulders. The taste of victory was bittersweet. They had won, but the cost had been immense. The faces of the survivors were etched with relief, yet shadowed by the memories of those they had lost. They had survived, yes, but at what cost? The question lingered in the air, unspoken yet palpable, as they surveyed the devastation around them.
Do-hyuk,
She began, her voice barely above a whisper. The words seemed to catch in her throat, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. He didn't turn, his gaze still fixed on some unseen point. His mind was elsewhere, lost in the labyrinth of his thoughts and fears.
we won.
She added, hoping to elicit a response. Her eyes searched his face, looking for any sign of relief or acknowledgement. Do-hyuk finally turned, his face etched with exhaustion and a deep, gnawing fear. The weight of their victory seemed to crush him, the reality of their situation sinking in.
Did we, Hae-yun? Or did we just delay the inevitable? His voice was tinged with doubt, the uncertainty of their future looming over them like a dark cloud.
Hae-yun had no answer. The question echoed in her mind, amplifying her own fears and uncertainties. Do-hyuk's words echoed her own fears. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The landscape was a stark reminder of the challenges that still lay ahead. A sense of foreboding settled over them, heavy and suffocating. The future was uncertain, and the weight of their victory felt more like a burden than a triumph. The concept of complaint weighed heavily on Do-hyuk's mind. It was not just a fleeting thought, but a constant presence, a shadow that followed him everywhere. It was a double-edged sword, sharp and unforgiving, capable of cutting both ways, a testament to their faith and a potential catalyst for their downfall. The sword symbolized the fine line between hope and despair. If their belief in him wavered even for a moment, if doubt crept into their hearts, it would spread like a disease. It could shatter the very foundation of their strength. The walls they had built, both literal and metaphorical, would crumble. He remembered the faces of those who had perished in the battle. Each face was a story, a life cut short. Their unwavering faith in him, their eyes filled with hope and trust. Their hope for a better future, a future they believed he could bring, it had all been snuffed out. The light of their dreams extinguished like candles in the wind. He felt the crushing weight of their sacrifice, the burden of their lost dreams, the burden of their expectations. It was a heavy load to carry, one that seemed to grow with each passing day.
Was he strong enough to bear it? Could he withstand the weight of their collective hopes and fears? Was he worthy of their faith? These questions haunted him, echoing in the silence of his solitude.
The doubts gnawed at him, relentless and unyielding, whispering insidious suggestions in his ear. They told him he was not enough, that he would fail. He was just a man, flesh and blood, with limits and vulnerabilities. How could he possibly shoulder the hopes of so many? The enormity of the task seemed insurmountable. The thought of disappointing them, of letting them down, of failing to live up to their expectations was a constant source of anxiety, filled him with a bone-deep dread. It was a fear that gripped his heart and refused to let go. Chanyul approached him, his face etched with concern. The others, survivors of the battle, looked to Do-hyuk with a mixture of hope and fear. Their eyes reflected his own inner turmoil, the uncertainty of the future etched into their features. He was their leader, their beacon of hope. But what if he led them astray? He had to be strong. He had to be the pillar they needed him to be.
We fought bravely.
He said, his voice surprisingly steady. A wave of relief washed over the crowd. His words, though few, held a ring of authority, of unwavering resolve. For a moment the fear receded, replaced by a flicker of hope. They clung to his words, to his presence, drawing strength from his apparent certainty. But Do-hyuk couldn't maintain the facade for long. The weight of the world seemed to press down on his shoulders, and the cracks in his armor began to show. The doubts, the fear, it all came crashing back. Every decision he had made, every step he had taken now seemed to haunt him. He looked at the faces before him, saw the exhaustion, the fear, the lingering trauma of the battle. Each face told a story of struggle, of pain, of a fight for survival. He saw the weight of their expectations, the burden of their hope, and he faltered. The responsibility was immense, and the pressure was almost unbearable.
But what if it wasn't enough? What if all their efforts were in vain?
He whispered, his voice breaking. The vulnerability in his tone was palpable, a stark contrast to the strong leader they had always known. The words hung in the air, heavy with despair. It was as if time itself had stopped, the weight of his confession pressing down on everyone present. The flicker of hope that had ignited in the eyes of the survivors flickered and died, replaced by a chilling dread. The shift in their emotions was almost tangible. They mirrored his emotions, their own fears amplified by his confession. The atmosphere grew heavier, the sense of impending doom more pronounced.
What if this is all for nothing? The question lingered, echoing in the minds of everyone present.
His words were a punch to the gut, a stark reminder of their precarious situation. The reality of their plight was undeniable. They had survived this battle, yes, but the scars it left were deep, and the relief was fleeting. But what about the next? The uncertainty of the future loomed large, casting a shadow over their brief respite. What about the countless battles that lay ahead? Each one a new challenge, a new test of their resolve and strength. The road ahead was long and fraught with danger, and the weight of that realization was almost too much to bear.